I'm here at Piccadilly Circus. There's a street called Piccadilly, and I travelled here on the Piccadilly line. I've never heard anybody ask, what actually is a Piccadilly? When you look at London's other infrastructure, you can have a general idea where the names came from. Trafalgar Square is named after the Battle of Trafalgar. Oxford Circus is on Oxford Street, the old way to Oxford. But what about everything Piccadilly? It's not just London either. There's also Piccadilly in Manchester. I looked it up in the dictionary, and the definition was one of the main streets in London. Then I asked my friends, and no one knew, so I did some digging. Imagine it's the mid-1500s and you're in the courts of Spain or Italy. You want to stand out and show your wealth and power, but everyone's already got fancy clothes and jewellery. You need something more. So people started wearing these extravagant linen ruffs around their necks, and it became so trendy that it became a massive industry. By the 1560s, these stiff-laced collars had made their way to England and quickly became the ultimate status symbol, helped by the fact that unless you were a knight or above, you couldn't actually legally wear one. Even Queen Elizabeth I wore one in a portrait around 1575. And it was into that world of lace-making and royal fashion stepped Robert Baker, who opened a workshop on the site behind me in around 1600 on what was then known as the Road to Reading, or the Way from Colnbrook. Pretty quickly, a name for these collars was developed. They called them Piccadilles, thought to come from the Spanish word picado, meaning punctured or pierced. With business booming, Baker built a house, which he called Piccadilly Hall. And in 1668, the street name finally changed to Portugal Street, named in honour of Catherine of Brazanga, the wife of King Charles II. It's safe to say that the name Portugal Street didn't catch on, and people just ended up calling it Piccadilly after the hall. So in 1673, part of the street was renamed Piccadilly, this time spelt as it is today, and eventually this spread to the whole street. Over time, it became a very respectable street, known for booksellers and stately homes. And it was off the back of this reputation that up here in Manchester in the 1750s, planners redeveloping Leavers Row had an idea. The street was going to be grand, and they needed a way to encourage people to move in. So, in an attempt to ride off Piccadilly's reputation and create a sort of sister street, they decided to rename the street Piccadilly. It worked, attracting wealthy middle-class merchants and professionals who built grand townhouses. Over the years, offices and shops were built, as well as Piccadilly Gardens, making it the busy metropolitan street it is today. But back in London, the name Piccadilly was just getting started. There was a huge new development happening called Regent Street. At each end of this new street, they built circuses. Not like in a tent, like the Latin word for circle, and they called them Regent Circus North and South. But these names again didn't catch on, and the North one was called Oxford Circus due to its link with Oxford Street, and the South one was renamed Piccadilly Circus after its link with Piccadilly. Then, in 1902, two companies that were planning to build a railway under Piccadilly merged together to create the Great Northern, Piccadilly and Brompton Railway. This would be joined by the Baker Street and Waterloo Railway, with both planning to launch in 1906. Everyone loved them, but they hated the names, so they became the Bakerloo Line and the Piccadilly Line. The last major addition to this Piccadilly collection was the renaming of Manchester London Road Station to Manchester Piccadilly in 1960 to better reflect the local area. So, why do we love the word Piccadilly so much? Maybe it's just that it's a fun word to say. Or maybe it's that it sounds historic, even though most of us don't know what it means. Or maybe it's just that the new definition of Piccadilly is an exciting place to be. And that's the story of how a fashion accessory ended up providing a name to not just one street, but multiple important streets in different cities, a famous landmark, a major station, and an entire tube line responsible for 150 million journeys every year. Like so many things, the name adopted, the meaning lost. At least you now know the meaning behind this one.